Hey, welcome back to my channel. Got the Mobula 6 here. Interesting little ripper. So it's 65 millimeter little whoop. Well, I did some crashing, I did some banging, and I was doing some tuning, trying to do some acro, some freestyle tuning, and of course, lots of bangs, and broke the frame and glued it and all that jazz. So I was going to replace this frame, and I thought, why not? Why not? This is a PicklePick frame. I got this from Rotor Geeks out of Canada. But you can see pretty good looking frame, and it's pretty stout. I mean, for a 2 millimeter frame, it's got some strength to it. So we're looking at motor post to motor post is 102 millimeters. Motor post to motor post centers is 72 millimeters. Okay, and then the front is also 72 millimeters. So we can call this a True X frame. Okay, and basically we're not going to use this frame, and we're not going to use these props. So we have some gem fan. One thing you need to make sure is when you're looking at props for this little guy, it has a 1 millimeter shaft. Okay, those motor shafts are 1 millimeter. So 65 millimeter prop with a 1 millimeter shaft is what's supposed to go on this frame. Now, these are over 3 years old, and these were for a Parrot drone, and these have a 1 millimeter shaft, and these are 66 millimeters, and they are also just pitched a little bit more pitched than the gem fans, and they're actually lighter, so pretty cool with that. And then I have red and white, so I can do some line of sight. But anyway, so you want to make sure that the 1 millimeter prop. The other thing you want to make sure is this quadcopter having the Crazy Bee F4 FR light board in it. From the factory, it came reversed prop configuration. Okay, so in other words, normally your prop would run clockwise. So they've reversed that. So when you build, or when you transfer this to your PicklePick frame, you want to make sure that you're putting the same prop configuration. Okay, so those are the two things that you kind of want to make sure of before you do this swap. Now I'm going to go ahead and take everything and put it over here on this frame, and as far as the tune and everything, I'm going to leave everything stock. But right now we'll just run it as is. I just want to get everything moved over. Alright, so we have one motor on, and as you can see, looks like our motor wires, if we untwist them, are going to go all the way to about here. So let's go ahead and pull the frame out and get it over here and see where we're at. Okay, so we got the flight controller, ESC, receiver, VTX. That one board is a whole lot of stuff, that's for sure. All this planning and the parts and stuff were already on the bench before I started to find that there's an issue with mine. It resets to factory defaults if the battery goes too low or something of that nature. Still waiting on Happy Model to let me know what they might have for a fix for that, but we're going to continue with this project anyway. So we have the flight controller, and the orientation of this flight controller is important. See that little arrow right there? It's just a faint little arrow. That's telling you that needs to point to the front. Okay? So It's right underneath this antenna here. So basically, to get this to work out, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have 3 standoffs, 3 little screws to hold those standoffs, so you can put your little rubber mounted bushings on the top of here. Now I have this little assortment set. I was kind of, I don't know, part of me is kind of upset in a way that the frame didn't come with any hardware to do this, you know, Mobula 6 conversion. So the other thing is, you can see these the motor wires are too short to reach, so we're gonna have to cut those in half and extend them. I'm just gonna mention here, I'm gonna grab a Sharpie, and I've got these 3 wires flat. Okay, so you can see going back to the motor, so you have 1, 2, 3. Okay, we want to keep that orientation, so we're going to run that out. Okay, so our center wire is in the center. Okay, so I'm just going to put a black dot on the case, so I know that side's up. So when I extend the motor wires, I'm not crisscrossing them around. So basically that way I don't have to go into BO-Heli and mess with all that. It'll just be ready to go in stock. So, alright, so basically, so our arrows are pointing that direction. This motor is off here, okay, off our frame. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this board all the way around. Okay, so we have our standoffs in place. We need 3 of these rubber grommets. Slide it on the frame onto our standoffs. You can kind of see here that there's just enough space for that connector and the wires to not be pinched. Okay, the reason why we do the reverse or turnaround is so that we can access our USB. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure my wire. I have like a whole box of this wire. Okay, got it off Amazon. But basically what I looked at is the diameter of that wire, okay, for the motor, and then the diameter inside the wire I'm going to use is the same, or this is just a little bit thicker. Okay, you don't want to use the wire itself. Okay, we're not dealing with the insulation, because depending on who the manufacturer is, they'll make the insulation thick or thin, and in this case the insulation on these motor wires is pretty thin. The insulation on this wire is pretty thick, so you can see that, you know, it looks like a lot bigger wire, but it's not. The wire inside is what matters. If you put too small of a wire between that motor lead, you're going to make a resistor. Okay, it might not be significant enough to worry about, but the rule of thumb is anytime I extend a wire, I'm going to make that wire thicker. So this is going to work out good. I'll go ahead and get those wires extended. The other thing I want to mention is on here, the battery lead is coming out of the top. Now if you want to, you can run your battery lead like that. I'm not a fan of that myself. So what I'm basically going to do is, you can see here on the other side of the board, you have your pads. Okay, so I'm going to unsolder the power lead for the battery, and then I'm going to solder it in here, so that way when the board is in the quadcopter, the battery lead's coming out of the bottom and going in between the frame and the board. And then I'm going to bring it out on this standoff, and I'm going to put a little wire tie on it so I can strain relief this wire on that standoff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the motor wires all extended, and I'm going to go ahead and get this battery lead resoldered, and then we'll go from there. Alright, well, I can tell you right now, extending the motor wires on this little guy is not for the faint of heart. So we got all the motor wires extended, and now we can work on our canopy. So basically what I'm trying to do here is, with an X-Acto knife, we're just going to waller out that hole just enough to where we can thread it with a 2mm. This is a metal 2mm hex screw. So I just want to put that in there and create a thread. Okay, so I'll push that all the way through, and then I'm basically threading this 2mm thick piece here. Okay, so the next step would be to go ahead and take the board. I still have to take the power lead and put it on the underside. We're set up here to go on. Okay, so we'll get all the motor wires and stuff plugged in, but before that we have to put this canopy on. See if I can show you here. Got to get this canopy on here, and then we need to take these standoffs and thread them into the canopy. So we'll have our little rubber grommet, and then we'll have the standoff, and we'll thread it in. So all three standoffs will be tight into this board and canopy. Then we'll set it down on the frame after we plug in all the motors, get everything situated, and then put the screws up through our standoffs, and that will mount everything perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that all buttoned up, and then we'll take a piece of black tape here and another one right here, just like a real thin little piece, and just wrap around it to maintain our motor wires. So once you take your power lead off and you flip your board over to reattach it, and it's not marked very well, so what you can do is you can put your meter on here. There's a ground tab right there, so you know that's ground. You can also go off the side of your USB drive, so you know that that pin right there is ground. Go to the other one here, nothing. Okay, so you know that's your ground pin. So you're going to put your battery lead red and black. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. See how I got a little bend on that? I just put a little kink in that, so when I turn it down, I've got an air gap below it, below the wire, so it's not actually touching the board, and that hot wire goes in quick. The ground takes a little more heat and just a touch more time to get the ground in, because there's so much circuitry hooked up to that ground, so it sucks the heat away a little quicker. But now I'm going to show you how, because I put that angle on that. See how that ground and power line, see how it's up off the board? That's that little bit of kink that you put in there to get that to come up off the board a bit. So we're good and attached here. What you can do is a continuity check between these two pins, just to make sure everything's good before you plug a LiPo into that. Just come in here and just make sure you don't touch your leads together. And no continuity. If you hear that, you're wanting to do something else. You've shorted something out. Alright, so our board will go in like that. We'll bring the power lead out off this standoff. Or we'll just zip tie it off on the frame right here. I'm trying my best to film this for you. It's just, this stuff is so tiny and my hands are so big. But the battery will go in here like that. And then the power lead will connect underneath here. So that's kind of how it's going to work. Okay? So that's why we soldered that power line underneath. So it's going to be nice and tidy. Okay? Let's go ahead and get the canopy put on. So we're just going to take these standoffs off of the frame. We're going to attach them to the board and attach the canopy threaded in there. Okay. All right. So we got the canopy mounted. I put a little silicone bushing in between the canopy mount. But basically our standoffs are threaded into the canopy. So you have your canopy, which is threaded, and then this standoff screws, you got your rubber grommet that comes with the board, and it screws into the canopy. And then a silicone washer here to isolate even more from the frame. And plus this will give a little bit of a lock washer effect. Okay, so now it's just time to go ahead and put some tape on the motor wires, get those all cinched down. All right, got all the motor wires cinched up, and I'll put a wire strap. I'm gonna mess around with battery placement before I strap that lead down, but all the motor wires are nicely tucked away. And now, for props out, we can take our props off and put on the other one. This thing is gonna be sick. I hope it's not just a big old pile waste of money. Still got to go into beta flight and make sure all the stuff's done. But that's pretty much it. That's a done built PicklePick 65mm props. Well, I tell you what, if we can get this one up and flying, you can see how much technology's changed. I mean, that's just awe-inspiring. So we got the old heavy 85-20 brushed motors. Although I'll have to admit, this one has 100 milliwatt VTX and an R-xsr receiver in it. So I don't suspect this one's going to have nowhere near the range of this one. But the weight difference is pretty staggering. So the little guy, I'm not wanting to press those on very much because we have to take them off. We have to go into beta flight and make sure the board orientation, and yeah, we got quite a bit of work left to do in beta flight. All right, 22.3 grams. Okay, without battery. 4166. 5440. 3072. Staggering amount of, just an amazing amount of difference in weight. So let's go ahead and pull the props off, and we'll jump into beta flight and make sure everything's set up the way it should be. Okay, we're over here at beta flight. We're going to go ahead and plug our quadcopter in, but before we do, I just want to let you know I have a fan blowing on it the whole time I'm plugged in. Okay, trying to keep that board as cool as we can while we're plugged in. If you don't have some way to keep that thing cool, you're going to have to do this in segments. You don't want that thing getting too hot. So go ahead and plug into beta flight. Make sure you got a COM port. If you don't, you're going to have to learn something here. You know, over here for drivers and whatnot. So we got our COM port. Go ahead and connect. And then in setup, you can face your quadcopter, like hold it as level as you can and face it towards your computer, and then click here, and that'll reset the alignment so it's facing the right direction. It makes it a lot easier if you do that. So now that we rotated our board to fit in that frame all the way around, we rotated it 180 degrees on the yaw axis. Okay, we didn't flip it over. We didn't rotate it counterclockwise, or, you know, it doesn't matter in this case for yaw. We just rotated it 180 degrees. So when I pitch forward, the quadcopter pitches back. See? So if I go back, forward, right, left, see how it's all backwards? So that's not going to work. Okay? So we have to go into configuration, and we have to go over here to board alignment, and we're going to change that to 180 degrees. Okay? Because we spun the board around on its yaw axis. We didn't flip it forward. We didn't flip it to the right or left. We rotated it. So that's where we need to go. So we'll hit save and reboot. Now back here in the setups tab, okay, when I rotate, or I move my quadcopter, now that we've done the, you know, rotation on the board alignment, when I go forward, back, right, left, forward, right, back, forward, left. See how it's all nice, and that's the way it should be. Okay, so we've got the orientation of the board correct. However, we need to go into the motors tab, because the ESC still thinks the motors are in that position. We need to alter that. Okay, those 4 motors can't be in the original positions anymore, because we've rotated this all in one board. You know, all the ESCs and the ESC and flight controllers all one. So we need to go over to motors tab. You know, we already did our continuity check, so we're going to plug a battery in. Okay, we got our tones. Let's set our quadcopter back in front of the fan. We're going to come, we do have our props off. Okay, I know this is a little quad, but we need to make sure that those props are off, because we don't want to bind them while we're doing this. So go ahead and spool up motor number 1. Okay, now do you notice that it spun this motor? You know, this is the front of your quadcopter here, and this is the back of your quadcopter. It's spinning that. When you put up motor 1, it's spun here. Okay, you go through each motor and you go to motor 4. You notice that on motor 4 it spins up this position. So we know that that's wrong. It's incorrect. Okay, because we spun the board around. The ESCs are confused. So we need to change that. Okay. So now that we know which slider operates what motor, okay, so you're going to draw this diagram. Okay, go ahead and sketch it out real quick. And then when you push up on motor 1 slider, okay, so just put SL1. So when you operate slider 1, motor 4 spins. Okay, and then go down through the line. You know, when you operate slider 4, this one spins. Okay, so you have that all written down. Now we need to go to CLI. And we're going to go in here, we're going to type in resource. Okay, hit enter. Go up to the top here, and you'll see here that it says resource motor 1, and then this B10, B06, B07, B08, that's the ESC thinks that that's the pins. The signal is on those pins. We need to change this order. Okay, so that's all we're going to do is just change this order here to be correct. All right, so you can type in resource motor 1, and then we know that when we want motor 1 in that position, we move our slider up and it moved number 4, right? So that's B08. See, it's telling us here, we need to write these down. B08 is the motor number 4. That's the one we want to spin up in the slider position 1. So we're going to type in here B08 and then hit enter. Okay, and then I'll go through all these and I'll show you the final here. Okay, so now we have them resourced. Okay, we typed in resource motor 1 B08. Okay, so now it's B08 and we hit all that. Okay, after typing in resource and then the command, and then you type in save, and then it'll resource those motors, so you can go back in this video and see where it was and where it is now. Okay, this may be a little confusing. If it is, let me know. I thought about drawing it out, you know, but basically you've seen what it looked like before and what it looks like now and how to do it. So that there's the setup. Okay, so now we're gonna go over here, and it's important for you to get a dump file. Okay, we've done some changes and we've, you know, gone so far with this thing. So get a dump file. Okay, and then we're going to come down here to dump. Alright, so copy to clipboard. Okay, and then paste that in a note file is what I use. Paste that somewhere so that you can come back. So if the battery goes too low for whatever reason, still waiting on Happy Model to let me know what the deal is. But if your battery goes too low, this thing goes back to default settings and you have to reload this dump file. So make sure that you have it. Okay, so now we're done in CLI. Okay, we go to the Motors tab. Okay, reconnect. Go over to Motors tab. Plug in your battery, and then just make sure when you spool up motor or slider 1, motor 1 spins. When you slide up motor 4, 4 spins. 2 spins. You know, just make sure that the order's correct. So then you're done in beta flight. That's all that we needed to do to get this thing going. Alright, so we're back at the bench here. Just because I don't have a whole lot of space to show this, and the weather is absolutely nasty. We're just going to make sure everything works the way it should. So I just put on the little Whoop props. I put some grip on the bottom. I'm going to probably redo this, make it look a little cleaner, but for now it just works. I got a little TPU piece that I put in the USB drive, so it's clean and protected. And before I go any further, I just want to let you know that I have a fan blowing on that the whole time while you're in beta flight. When you're plugged in, make sure you have a fan, or you're keeping track. It's only it doesn't take long at all for that thing to get really hot and melt. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put a battery on it, and I'm planning on just running a rubber band. Just pop a rubber band on there, and that'll keep the bat. That ain't moving anywhere, so that's fine. Put my battery lead where I think I might end up wanting it. Now, with the original frame, you know, the original Whoop, they had these pieces of foam stuffed in under the camera to keep it from having jello. I guess that was their fix. So I may need to put those back in. I'm gonna see how things work out, you know, when I finally get to go outside with this thing. Really, really bad weather. But all the little pieces and parts, the leftover rubber grommet and the frame, I'm just gonna tuck it away for another day. Let's go ahead and get the transmitter.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Okay, go ahead and plug in. Alright, we got all 5 tones. Now I'm going to go, in case this thing freaks out, I'm going to get back a little ways. I know there's a little Whoop Propsoffohio. Now remember, you got to put your props back on in reverse order, so props out. Okay, so they're going to rotate that way. This one's going to rotate this way. That one is going to rotate that way. And that one's going to go. Make sure you put them on right. Alright, let me get out of here. So we're going to go ahead and arm. Pull throttle up. Alright, so everything worked great. Everything looked good. These little props are struggling to pick up that little bit of extra weight that we got. I was probably at 48% throttle. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like when we put these on there. But that's the build video. I'm going to do another video of flying this thing. So I'm kind of waiting for warmer weather, or maybe get a hold of somebody that's got some warehouse space or something. But hey, I appreciate you hanging in there. I hate to say it's about 3 in the morning, so I'm kind of wiped. But I appreciate your time. I hope this was really cool. And, you know, if you're following along trying to do something like this, it's a little bit more work than I thought it was going to be. But we got it. We got it done. So I appreciate your time. And if you like this video,
Telemetry lost.
Give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If not, you hate it, give me a thumbs down. Enjoy the breeze.